In the late 1990s, if you walked into a department store in the United States and headed toward the hosiery section, everything looked the same. Beige boxes, clinical language, reinforced hose, and a product category that felt like it hadn't meaningfully changed in decades. And then, almost suddenly, there was this bright red box. That box belonged to Spanx. Today, Spanx is a billion-dollar brand. But its origin story doesn't begin in a fashion studio or a corporate boardroom. It begins in an apartment in Atlanta with a pair of scissors and a very specific clothing problem. The founder, Sara Blakely, wasn't working in apparel. She was selling fax machines door to door for Donka, which meant cold calls, rejections, and commission-based pressure. That job didn't give her fashion credentials. It gave her repetition. It gave her tolerance for hearing no. And that turned out to matter more. Here's the problem she ran into. She wanted to wear white pants to a party. Traditional pantyhose had reinforced toes, which made them unusable with open-toe shoes, and they created visible seams under thin fabric. The shapewear on the market felt stiff and outdated, so she cut the feet off her control-top pantyhose. The result wasn't perfect. The waistband rolled, the fabric wasn't engineered for that shape, but the silhouette improved. And that was enough to suggest something bigger. Maybe this wasn't just a personal hack. Maybe it was a product. At the time, North Carolina was still the center of American hosiery manufacturing, so Blakely started calling mills directly. Most of them declined. From their perspective, she was an unknown salesperson asking for small production runs in a category that already existed. There was no clear demand data, no retail commitment. Eventually, one mill agreed to produce samples. Internal conversations helped. Younger family members of the mill owner understood the concept immediately. That first production run turned an altered pair of tights into an actual SKU. With $5,000 in savings, Blakely incorporated the company and began working through the mechanics of turning an idea into inventory. She studied patent filings and wrote her own application, securing intellectual property protection for her design in 2000. In apparel, patents aren't always central. In this case, they gave her leverage against immediate imitation. Then there was the branding decision. Instead of following the industry standard, neutral packaging, muted tones, medical framing, she designed bright red boxes. On a department store shelf, filled with beige, red becomes a signal. It draws the eye before a salesperson ever speaks. The name Spanx was short, punchy, and easy to remember. It didn't sound clinical. It sounded modern. Retail access was the next hurdle. In 2000, she secured a meeting with a buyer at Neiman Marcus. Rather than explaining the product abstractly, she demonstrated it. Seeing the before and after effect under clothing made the difference tangible. The buyer agreed to test it in several stores. Those initial placements mattered. In retail, velocity, how fast a product sells off the shelf, determines whether it survives. Spanx moved. And then came the cultural accelerant. Later that year, Oprah Winfrey featured Spanx on her favorite things list. That endorsement triggered a surge in national awareness. Demand spiked, retailers paid attention, production had to scale. But here's what's interesting. Blakely didn't take venture capital during those early years. Growth came from reinvested profits. That meant slower expansion compared to heavily funded startups, but it also meant she retained ownership. Over time, that ownership compounded. Spanx expanded methodically into adjacent categories. Bodysuits, bras, leggings, maternity wear, denim, always anchored in compression and fit engineering. The company positioned itself less as lingerie and more as performance apparel, which helped justify premium pricing and reinforced brand identity. By 2012, when Forbes recognized Blakely as one of the youngest self-made female billionaires, Spanx had become a dominant name in shapewear. What had started as a modified pair of tights was now a globally distributed brand. In 2021, a majority stake in Spanx was acquired by Blackstone Incorporated at a valuation of $1.2 billion. After more than 2 decades, the company moved from founder-controlled growth into a new phase backed by institutional capital. So what actually happened here? Spanx didn't invent the idea of shapewear. It reframed it, it identified a narrow but persistent consumer frustration. It validated the solution with small production runs. It differentiated visually in a stagnant retail environment. It leveraged earned media exposure instead of relying on paid advertising early on, and it scaled while maintaining ownership. The scissors in that Atlanta apartment weren't a symbolic gesture. They were the first iteration of a product development cycle, and over time, iteration turned into inventory turned into distribution, and distribution turned into equity. That's how a $5,000 savings account became a billion-dollar apparel company. Not through a single breakthrough moment, but through a sequence of strategic decisions executed over 2 decades in an industry that had quietly left space for reinvention.